Hello, viewers. We are back after a long period and we'll be uploading some great content regularly. Today's OP is broad ads, and we will also look into some comments as well. The story's original link is also provided in the description. So let's get into the story. Way back in the early 2000s, I began to suspect that my wife was up to something. Our two kids were about 4 and 6, still young, but not so young they couldn't tell you something about what had happened in their day. They started talking a lot about staying with my wife's parents during the day, which wasn't really that strange in and of itself. But since they lived about 90 minutes away, doing so 2 or 3 times a week seemed a bit much. That was basically every day she wasn't working at her part-time job. When I asked her about it, she denied it, but was never a good liar. So I started tracking the mileage on her car, and sure enough, she was driving an extra 400 or so miles per week. I knew some shit was going on. Then one day I sat down at the computer, and she had left a sticky note with her American Online password written on it next to the keyboard. I could not resist and logged in to read her emails and saw a few email exchanges between her and her college BFF, best friend forever, where they discussed how my wife was regularly doing one of her ex-boyfriend from high school. No mention of details about him other than my wife also talking shit about his wife, making fun of how she'd gotten fat after having kids. Anyway, I printed out these email exchanges and stashed them. I still needed to know the details, so I called a friend who was a cop, and he suggested I call a guy he knew that had left the force to become a private investigator. Ron was great. I paid his retainer and gave him the emails and what little I knew about my wife's activities, and he figured out exactly what she was doing. His report detailed with photos and times/dates/locations all about how she would take the kids to her parents, then go meet this guy for lunch, then they'd go to a dumpy motel for a few hours, after which she'd pick up the kids and return home. At this point, I hired a divorce lawyer. My parents cheated on each other, and the fallout absolutely messed mine and my siblings' childhood. It was something that was totally unacceptable. I also asked Ron to find out what he could about this guy. Ron absolutely came through. I learned his name, Bob, that he was married and had 3 kids. I also found out that he worked as a VP of sales for his father-in-law's business. At this point, I had my lawyer draw up the divorce papers. I also asked Ron for a couple more copies of his report, and one more thing I wanted him to do for me. On the same day I had my wife serve with the divorce papers at her work, I had Ron meet with this guy's wife and show her everything he'd found out. She seemed nice, and I figured that she deserved to know what her dear hubby was up to. What she did with that information was up to her. While the information about my wife's infidelity didn't really matter in my divorce proceedings, Bob's wife did a real number on him. According to the publicly available court documents from the divorce and other related proceedings, she cleaned out their joint account, took the kids, and left. As soon as her dad found out what he'd done, Bob was fired, and since her parents actually owned the house where Bob and his wife lived, he also got evicted. Their divorce was ugly, lots of fighting in and evidently out of court. I guess Bob went to the house and started arguing with his wife, and it escalated to the point that her brother stepped in and Bob got his nose broken. There were restraining orders, a few more incidents with police reports, criminal charges, jail time, and so on. I can't find Bob on the internet anywhere these days. Last I heard, he left the state and his ex-wife did okay. She went to work at her dad's company and took over after he retired. As for me, my ex and I got along well enough. I didn't engage with her on anything that wasn't related to the kids, and now that they're both adults, I don't talk to her at all anymore. I don't hate her or anything, but I only care in the context that she is my kid's mom and is important to them, nothing beyond that. Now let's get into some comments. Kurjev's commented, "That's some serious maturity you had there without breaking down. Your ability to keep your sanity would be one of the most crucial things your kids will and should learn, Imo." Broad_ads OP replied, "I was definitely angry with my wife, and don't get me wrong, I made her suffer throughout the divorce. For example, she wanted to try couples therapy, and I agreed, not because I thought there was a path to reconciliation, but because it felt good to lay out exactly how I felt about what she'd done. How disgusted, disappointed, and angry I was with her. She always left those appointments in tears and would sit bawling in her car for a while before pulling herself together. Eventually, she realized that was already over for us and canceled the remaining appointments. I also had to think about what was best for the kids. I wasn't going to bring the chaos I experienced into their lives, where I saw my parents screaming at each other, my dad calling my mom a whore, and worse, and vice versa. It was in their best interest to make things go smoothly. I've never told them the details of what happened between their mom and me, and I probably never will. I don't know what she's told them about it, but I still have Ron's reports stashed away in case they need to see the truth. Also, I wasn't really angry with Bob for my own sake. I was angry with him on behalf of his wife. I felt like she deserved to at least know what was going on, and what she chose to do about it was up to her. Bob's consequences are due to his wife's and probably her dad's rage at what he'd done. I just lit the fuse. Clear-headed 01 commented. Question OP. Did your ex ever find out you insure the wife of the creep she was doing was told the affair? And your ex, how did she react when she was served divorce papers? OP replied, I don't know if she knew or found out what I'd done or the full extent of it, but I know that once Bob didn't have a high-paying job, lots of money, or a place to live, she dropped him like a hot rock. She also stopped her shenanigans after getting served to beg for forgiveness and to try to save our relationship. We had a lot of conversations about how my parents' infidelities had messed up my family and how I felt cheating was 1000% unforgivable. She flipped out at work and called me about 100 times, alternating between being apologetic and enraged over having her serve in front of her colleague.